In Strategic Turn 1, House Corbin attacked Hexawill and Rutherford. The Chupacabras were able to defend Hexawill, but the town remains in contested territory. However, Rutherford was successfully captured by House Corbin, and the 2nd Regal Battalion of the 1st Regiment now occupies the town. Before we dive into the next strategic turn, let's get nerdy with numbers. And you know what? A picture's worth 1,000 words. At the Battle of Hexawill, House Corbin's 1st Regal Battalion of the 1st Regiment lost 12 mechs and 2 infantry squads. The Chupacabras' 4th Battalion lost 9 mechs, 2 infantry squads, and 4 vehicles. At the Battle of Rutherford, House Corbin's 2nd Regal Battalion of the 1st Regiment lost 4 mechs. However, the Chupacabras' 4th Battalion lost 7 mechs, 2 VTOLs, and 4 vehicles. And this is mainly due to losing the air superiority to House Corbin's 2 air defense batteries. This is the total losses for both sides of Strategic Turn 1. Don't forget that one of House Corbin's Aerodyne dropships was shot down, destroying 4 Shadowhawks on board. That's a total of 20 mechs lost. The League lost 16, but they also lost infantry and various vehicles. Basically, it's a rough start for both sides in this campaign. This brings us to Strategic Turn 2. The League has the initiative, which for the strategic campaign means that the League will take the first action and has the option to launch up to 2 attacks this turn. Now the League has identified 2 paths to victory for themselves. Since House Corbin broke the ceasefire, then every admin turn, which is basically every 5th strategic turn, House Corbin will lose 1d6 worth of victory points. If House Corbin is reduced to -20 victory points, then they will lose the war. However, House Corbin has captured the city of Sapphire Bay, which means House Corbin controls 11 urban districts, and therefore will receive 2d6 victory points during the admin turn. To starve House Corbin out of the war, the League will need to reduce House Corbin's control of urban districts to 9 or less. That's a long way to go. The players called this path to victory their starving plan. The other path to victory is to threaten and or capture the capital district in the city of Cabolton. If the League does this, then for each strategic turn, not each admin turn but each strategic turn, the League will gain 1d6 victory points, which is a much faster path to victory. The players called this path to victory their capital plan. Now it took the League players a long time to decide their course of action. I'm talking days here. They nearly missed their deadline for submitting their command tasks. They were really burning the midnight oil on this one. The joys of a military campaign. Without getting too deep into the details, here's the gist of what they were thinking. Using the intel of the locations of House Corbin's forces located in the northern Hazi Peninsula, and counting the number of actions that it would have taken those units to get to those locations, they were able to deduce that this part of the peninsula is likely void of enemy forces. Also, the town of Runikfur was a neutral logistics hub, which means it does not have static air defenses installed, yet. As I mentioned before, the 5th strategic turn is an admin turn, and House Corbin would then have the opportunity to spend some resources and build air defenses at that logistics hub. Once Runikfur has air defenses, starborne assaulting the southern Hazi Peninsula would no longer be an option. So there was a window of opportunity, about 3 strategic turns worth, for the League to invade via dropships and capture Runikfur. The League would then press an attack on Sapphire Bay from the north and the south. Once the League captured Sapphire Bay, the League would simply need to sit back and wait for House Corbin to starve out any hope of victory. And that's the starving plan. Easy peasy. But the Viceroy was not convinced. She opposed this plan for 3 reasons. First, House Corbin controlled the mid-Mel starport, whereas the League would have to rely on Pathfinders to constantly establish landing zones for the League to bring reinforcements in. Therefore, House Corbin would have the advantage of bringing reinforcements. Secondly, the Viceroy lamented that the League had deployed 3 of their clusters to the field. 2 were sent to deter House Corbin's supposed incursion into the Hazi Valley, and the 3rd was deployed to threaten the Northwest Pass into the Hazi Peninsula. Recall that the League's initial strategy was to keep quick reaction forces in each of their starports in order to rapidly deploy via dropships to anywhere on Bluehole. But now instead of having 5 battalions ready to go, the League only had 2 available. Not much of an invasion. And lastly, the Viceroy asked the simple question of who is surrounding whom. If the League hypothetically invaded the southern part of the peninsula, that invasion force would be isolated. The only retreat available is across the Azure Strait, which the eastern bank is controlled by the enemy. The Viceroy felt for the starving plan to work, too many things had to go right, not leaving much wiggle room. So the Viceroy nixed the starving plan. Okay, let's have a look at the League's capital plan. The League knew that House Corbin's 2nd Regiment was holding Sapphire Bay and the Hazi Peninsula. They also surmised that House Corbin's 1st Regiment was located somewhere on the far side of the Elkin Mountains. The big unknown was the whereabouts of House Corbin's 3rd Regiment. The League was correctly assuming that the 3rd Regiment was spread across House Corbin's territory. According to the League players, there are 4 routes that the League could use to invade Cabolton. Water crossing at Jasper Docks and attack from the northwest. Use dropships to invade the Cabolton Flats and attack from the northeast. Or use dropships to invade the Shivermoors and attack from the southeast. And lastly, capture Rutherford, which opens up the combination of water crossings and other avenues of approach that basically attacks the city from the southwest. As of Strategic Turn 2, which route or routes the League will take has not yet been decided, but the League did eliminate the idea of an attack on Rutherford. In fact, the Chupacabra player was asked to do something that she felt was borderline blasphemous: give up ground in Lambridge. The idea is that 1st Regiment would commit themselves to taking Blue Shore and draw forces away from Cabolton. Taking Blue Shore would initially accelerate House Corbin's path to victory, but it won't be fast enough if their capital is captured by the League. The capital plan also called for pressuring Sapphire Bay in order to tie down House Corbin's 2nd Regiment to the Hazi Peninsula, while at the same time positioning units to prepare for an invasion. Both plans were risky, but the Viceroy made her decision. The objective is the capital city of Cabolton. For the next few strategic turns, the League will be preparing for their invasion. Now let's get into the command strategic actions for Strategic Turn 2. To capitalize on the unrest in Sapphire Bay, a special operations team was sent to Mid-Mel with the objective of sabotaging an enemy mech. Unfortunately, they rolled poorly. The mission failed, but the Spec Ops was able to escape capture and destruction. The League spun up 2 combat air patrols and dispatched the Sola to recon the Cobalt Flats, looking for potential landing zones. Remember, this recon flight is kept secret from House Corbin, unless of course the Sola flies over an air defense position. As for House Corbin, the only command staff utilized was the Fleet Marshal, who dispatched 2 combat air patrols to the skies of Blue Hole. 1 Angel Strike Fighter was tasked with a recon mission as well. You see, House Corbin knew there were lots of bad guys in Hazi Valley. What they didn't know was how many enemy forces was in the Pentabai Craglands. During the action phase, the factions took alternating actions, but in the end, their actions didn't interact with one another. So I'll show you what each side did in their neck of the woods. First, the Chupacabra 3rd and 4th Battalions switched positions, with the 4th Battalion also taking an additional movement action to reposition to Mortarbourne. From that location, the 4th Battalion was guarding Sinhelm, which enabled the 4th Cluster to pull back to Goldboro Starport, and the 1st Cluster to pull back to Sumberpool Starport. The clusters are now back in their starports, but are still available to push out a defensive operation to defend Hazi Valley in Strategic Turn 3, if necessary. The rest of the League's actions were all repair actions focused on the Chupacabra's 4th Battalion. Now, while all of this was going on in Lambridge, down in the Hazi Peninsula, House Corbin was also repositioning their forces. The 3rd Battalion of the 2nd Regiment moved to occupy Runic for a logistics hub. The 4th Battalion took the transport action and departed Spellcombe using dropships and landed in Mid-Mel of Sapphire Bay. And just like the League, the remainder of House Corbin's actions were repairing the 1st and 2nd Battalion of the 1st Regiment. During the combat phase, the Chupacabra's 1st Battalion launched an attack against the town of Sisterstrand. However, House Corbin's 2nd Regiment did not contest the attack, and Sisterstrand was occupied without firing a shot. To maintain the pressure on 2nd Regiment in the Hazi Peninsula, the League's 3rd Cluster launched an attack on the town of Whiteloft. The town has a logistics hub and both sides are desperate to control it. House Corbin's 2nd Battalion of the 2nd Regiment deployed forces to defend Whiteloft. Both sides commit their battalion artillery to the battle, and each side dispatched a combat air patrol to try to gain air superiority. So without further ado, this is the Battle of Whiteloft. Welcome to Whiteloft. Before the clan invasion in 3169, this town was well on its way to becoming a city. However, when Clan Jade Falcons took over, they implemented their societal caste system. If you were deemed not necessary to keep the logistics hub functioning, then you are reassigned somewhere else on Blue Hole. White Loft has not yet recovered from the clan system. The logistics hub is functioning, but the remainder of the town is primarily a ghost town, picked clean by scavengers. Oddly enough, both the League and House Corbin made political promises to revitalize this region of the planet prior to the war breaking out. But now that the two sides are at war, then I guess they will break their promise and just blow up the town. Defending White Loft is House Corbin's 2nd Regal Battalion of the 2nd Regiment. The player decided not to deploy their Patreon unit of Old Gristle's gunslingers to this battle. At least, not yet. The player's strategy for this battle is to soften up the clan mechs, then attack again next strategic turn, destroying the clan mechs with their Patreon company. Therefore, the player deployed their first mech company, which is comprised of an Atlas Lance, a Warhammer Lance, and a Fire Lance with 2 Fafnirs and 2 Stalkers. The second mech company was also deployed, which is comprised of a Cougar Lance, a Shadowhawk 2C Lance, and a Rifleman 2C Lance. Supporting this attack is Alpha Company Heavy Infantry, which has 2 platoons of mechanized infantry and 1 platoon of battle armor infantry. Also supporting the defense of White Loft is the Patreon unit of the Bog Witches, led by Captain Talia Bruja Richter Gomez. This Patreon unit was formerly the 38th Everglade Jaegers. This heavy battle lance from the Stargator Corps is called the Bog Witches, piloted exclusively by women due to the quirk of their preferred mechs than by design. A former Davian exclusive Merc unit, they were released from their contract post-Jihad when the main body returned home to Titusville to become a regular Republic force. This battalion remained a mercenary unit over the numerous years, specializing in riverine operations and raiding. However, this lance is out to make a new name for themselves, selling their services to either side that pays better or provides the best toys. Both factions tried to recruit this lance, but with the promise of the title of Viscountess of Easterwitch, the commander of this lance joined House Corbin's forces. Attacking White Loft is Alien and Mercantile Militia's 3rd cluster. The player is deploying 2 trinaries into the battle, the Striker Trinary and the Battle Trinary. Those of you with sharp eyes might notice these stars are exactly how they are sold by CGL in their box sets. When I asked the player about his choice in mechs, he simply responded, "Hey, they're box buddies. I can't separate them. That would be cruel." Oh well, it's his army, so, you do you, boo. The Striker Trinary is comprised of a Striker Star, a Fire Star, and a Support Star. The Battle Trinary is comprised of a Battle Star, a Heavy Battle Star, and a Support Star. Supporting the attack is the cluster's Ad Hoc Star and 1 star of Elemental Infantry armed with lasers. Now this battle is a contested town, so we will start the battle off with recon units skirmishing for momentum. The League selected their Ad Hoc Star to act as their recon unit, and House Corbin selected their Shadowhawk 2C Lance to be theirs. But before we get this battle going, we want to notify you all in a noticeable notifying notification of a new notable noble, taking up the noteworthy noble cause of supporting the channel, and has thus been denoted a notable noble. Thank you, Shadow Fox, for your noble support. You have our undying gratitude. Since the League has initiated the attack, then they have the initiative. House Corbin's Shadowhawk Lance will move and shoot first, and they jump onto the battlefield, taking cover behind some buildings. The League's Ad Hoc Star ground moves into the woods on the western side of town. The League has the advantage due to the force structure of 5 mechs. The Shadowhawks will need to try to thin out their numbers if they want to stand a chance. The Shadowhawks concentrate their fire on the baboon with a target number of 11. But only 1 Shadowhawk hit the mech, dealing 1 point of damage to the baboon's armor, which also earned House Corbin 1 momentum point. The Ad Hoc Star returns fire. The Kodiak takes aim at 1 Shadowhawk, while the rest of the star concentrates on a different one. The target number was 10 for both mechs. The Kodiak hit, dealing 1 damage to its target. As for the rest of the star, they missed, and instead put significant amount of damage into the building, but it still stands. In the second turn of the skirmish, House Corbin had the initiative. The League will need to move and shoot first. The Ad Hoc Star moves forward. The baboon breaks line of sight behind the building but stays within the capture range of the center control point. The Kodiak takes cover next to the baboon, and the rest of the star moves forward into a mix of cover from the woods and buildings. House Corbin, still outnumbered, needed to find a way to not only be within the capture range of the control point, but also take out an enemy mech or 2. So the player jumps his lance forward into the capture zone and right amongst the ad hoc star. From this position, the Shadowhawks broke line of sight with the Kodiak, and at the same time lined up some rear arc shots on some of the enemy mechs. That was a pretty smooth maneuver actually. But the door swings both ways. The League opened fire at close range with a target number of 7, due to the intervening woods and all that jumping. The Shadowhawks took some hits, with a total of 6 damage between 2 of the Shadowhawks. The Shadowhawks returned fire. 2 of them fired at the front and the rear arc of the Hellion, and were able to destroy the mech. And the remaining 2 mechs fired at the Fire Falcon, dealing it enough damage to destroy the mech. This brings the skirmish to a close. With a loss of 2 mechs, but also inflicting a total of 7 damage on the enemy, the League acquired 16 momentum points. House Corbin, on the other hand, won their first skirmish of this war with 22 momentum points. The League player will need to deploy his army first, and within 4 inches of their edge. House Corbin, after seeing the League's deployment, will deploy his forces within 8 inches of his ledge. The players also designate 2 capture points that could potentially become the key terrain for the battle after turn 1. House Corbin chose this location, and the League selected the container yard to be theirs. By the way, aren't these some sweet looking terrain? A fan of the show owns a terrain STL company, and he printed and painted this terrain for us, including these cool buildings. If you're interested in getting some terrain and have access to a 3D printer, check out Wasteland Game Studios. The link is in the description. This is not an affiliate link or anything, so we won't get anything out of it. But we are impressed with the quality of this studio and thought you might want to check it out too. Okay, let's get back to the battle. Now, that looks like a lot of mechs out there. House Corbin has deployed a total of 40 units. 4 battle armor infantry, 4 mechanized infantry, 4 vehicles, and 28 mechs. The League also has 40 units, but a cluster is organized differently than Intersphere companies. The League has deployed 35 mechs and 5 elementals on the field. Well, 33 mechs now, since 2 were destroyed during the skirmish phase, but, you know, that's gotta hurt. In the skies of a White Loft, fighters battle for air supremacy. The players roll their dice, and though the League had control of the skies, they were unable to roll high enough to make any strikes on the ground units. Instead, both wings are locked into dogfighting, with House Corbin sustaining 3 damage and the League taking 2 hits. House Corbin has the initiative since they won the momentum from the skirmish phase. The League will need to move and shoot first. The League activated their battle trinary and advanced toward the Lakeport facility, grabbing what cover they could. Once they finished their ground move, the Elemental Star hopped down from the support star, which they were riding into battle. House Corbin activates his second mech company and jumps the Shadowhawk Lance back to their original position, while the rest of the company moves forward into cover. The platoon of battle armor infantry also dismount from the Cougars. The League activates the Ad Hoc Star and does a combination of jumping and ground moving, repositioning into cover in the commercial zone. House Corbin activates his infantry platoon. The battle armor cannot move since they are already dismounted, but the deputies move forward. Once the vehicles are repositioned, the infantry on board dismount the vehicles. The League activates the Striker Trinary. The support and Striker Stars ground move into the wood line just next to the farm. The Fire Star ground moves into cover, keeping the Kit Fox and Dasher in cover, ready to move out and capture the key terrain. Since the League's elemental infantry dismounted this turn, they can no longer take a move action. Therefore, House Corbin can activate their last 2 units. First, the Bog Witches are activated, and the Riverine combat experts are ordered to jump into the lake, taking cover behind the water processing facility. And last but not least, the first mech company is activated. The Warhammer Lance advances into the clearing, careful to keep intervening woods between the Lance and the enemy. Their intention is to eventually take the tree line and hold the line to protect the Fire Lance. The Atlas Lance moves into the neighborhood, using the houses and sparse woods as cover. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. The League will shoot first. The Striker and Support Star open fire on the 2 Warhammers. The Support Star completely missed, but the Striker Star was able to hit their targets and dealt 5 damage to the Warhammer's armor. The Marauder and Behemoth of the Battlestar, as well as the entire Ad Hoc and Firestar, open fire on the Atlas with a target number of 8. The Atlas took 9 damage to its armor, which it just shrugged off. The House, on the other hand, has seen better days. The rest of the heavy battle trinary split their fire between the Bog Witches, the Shadowhawk Lance, and the Cougar Lance. Target numbers range between 7 and 9. In the end, the Thunderbolt of the Bog Witches took 6 damage to its armor, but one of the hits was a critical hit to its ammo. But luckily the mech has case, so the controlled detonation of the ammo doesn't destroy the mech, but it does cause the last point of armor to be blown off. The Cougars need to consider buying lottery tickets because every shot missed, but the buildings took a few hits. The Shadowhawks were not so lucky. The 2 damaged Shadowhawks were targeted and dropped, right along with the building that they were taking cover behind. Spotting infantry in the open, the League calls down an artillery strike. The target was the battle armor squad, but the shot missed and landed on the dismounted mechanized troops, and the artillery shot obliterated them. House Corbin can return fire. The first mech company opens fire on the Striker Star, with each lance focusing on one of the lighter mechs, the Piranha, the Peregrine, and the Vixen. The Warhammers with a target number of 10 just barely hit the Piranha with enough damage to take it out. The Fire Lance with the overwhelming firepower destroyed the Peregrine. The Vixen was a little bit luckier. It took 5 points of damage, wiping out its armor and dealing 1 structure damage that caused critical damage to its fire control. The rest of House Corbin's forces opened fire on enemy support and heavy battle stars, prioritizing on the lighter mechs. In the end, the Bog Witches were able to hit the Battle Cobra in the woods, putting a total of 9 damage into the mech, which was enough to destroy it. The rest of House Corbin's forces were able to put 5 damage into the Hunchback. This wiped out all of its armor and caused 1 structure damage. This necessitated a critical damage check, which was also an ammo hit, but this mech is an energy weapon only mech, so the critical damage is ignored. The Cougars opened fire on the Ebon Jaguar, and the players went on and on about cat fights and attempting to make mountain lion roars and meowing here and there. They, of course, thought they were the funniest people in the world. Maybe they were for about half a second. Anyway, the Cougars hit the Jaguar, dealing it 4 points of damage to the mech's armor. House Corbin called in artillery on one of the elementals, but it missed and landed on the Black Lantern, dealing 1 damage to its armor. And this brings shooting to a close. The players roll to see which capture point will remain on the battlefield as the key terrain, and they rolled a 5. So only the original center point and the capture point selected by the attacker will remain on the battlefield as the key terrain to be captured. The container yard, as well as the map center as the key terrain, will make it quite difficult for House Corbin to hang on to this battlefield. But just look how cool the container yard looks. I mean, these stacks of containers are awesome. I can arrange them in any different pattern or obstacles and barriers. I just love them. Anyway, sorry, moving on. This brings turn 1 to a close. House Corbin lost 2 mechs, and the League lost 3 mechs this turn, for a total of 5 mechs so far in this battle. But with the selection of the key terrain made, the League might be favored in this battle. The Eagles and the Visigoths are still battling in the skies. They rolled a 6 and a 7, so their planes are still locked into dogfighting, with the League inflicting 2 damage to the Eagles and the League suffering 3 damage to the Visigoths. At this point, with knowledge of the key terrain's location, let's have a quick tactical pause to consider the strategic considerations of the House Corbin player. White Loft has a functioning logistics hub. This is why both sides want to control this town. For House Corbin, it would be nice to control White Loft in order to better defend Sapphire Bay. However, the League needs the logistics hub in order to lay siege to Sapphire Bay. But the key terrain has made it difficult for House Corbin to win, or so he thinks. Therefore, he is considering that he might need to lose this battle, but lay the groundwork to win the next battle by destroying as many League mechs as possible while preserving his own forces. But that's easier said than done. And by turn 2, the player hadn't made up his mind yet. So let's see how this plays out. House Corbin won the initiative. The League will need to move and shoot first for turn 2. The League activates their battle trinary. The heavy battle star moves into the shipyard and seizes control of the key terrain, while the support star moves into the lake for protection. The battle star moves forward to the key terrain of the traffic circle. House Corbin activates his second mech company. To keep the TMM up for his Shadowhawks, he jumps into a new position. The Cougars take the position where the Shadowhawks were just at, and the Rifleman takes the position where the Cougars were just at. The League activates the Elementals, and they jump forward, closing in on the container yard to help control the key terrain. House Corbin activates his infantry company. The deputies stand still while the dismounted mechanized infantry take up fire positions inside the buildings, while the battle armor infantry jump into cover, charging the heavy battle star in the container yard. They must have lost their minds. The League activates their ad hoc star, and the star repositions. The Kodiak takes cover behind the commercial building, and the rest of the star takes cover in those woods, just behind the battle star. House Corbin activates the Bog Witches, which trudges forward in the lake to keep their TMM up. The League activates the Striker Trinary, which is not too keen in closing in on House Corbin's first heavy mech company. So instead, the Trinary repositions around the farm and commercial zone for cover. Sensing the hesitation in the League's Striker Trinary, House Corbin's first heavy mech company advances forward. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. The League will shoot first. The League player hesitated for a moment, concerned about damaging the logistics buildings, but then decided that the Viceroy would spend resources to repair it, so shooting at the Rifleman Lance was worth the risk. With the exception of the Turkina, the Heavy Battlestar, the Warhammer 2C, and the Hunchback split their fire amongst the Rifleman Lance. The target number ranged between 8 and 9. In the end, a Rifleman and the building took 2 hits each. The other 3 Rifleman mechs took 4 damage each to their armor. The Support Star and the Lake split their fire between the Grasshopper and the Thunderbolt. The Night Cheer was tasked to finish off the Thunderbolt, while the rest of the Star focused on the Grasshopper. But the Night Cheer failed to destroy the Thunderbolt, and instead inflicted 2 structure damage to the mech, leaving half of its structure left. This also caused critical damage to the mech's fire control. The Grasshopper took 6 points of damage, leaving only 1 armor point left. The entire Battlestar, the Turkina Prime, and the Firestar's Masakari took aim at the Cougars in cover behind the apartment buildings. The target number was a 9, and despite all that firepower, in the end, only 1 of the Cougars was taken out, and the other mechs sustained 4 damage each. The rest of the Striker Trinary all focused fire on one of the Warhammers with a target number of 7, and unlike the Cougars, under all that firepower, that mech was destroyed. The League called artillery down on the Thunderbolt and hit the mech. This caused 1 more structure damage and critical damage to its weapons. The Thunderbolt is barely holding itself together with 1 structure point left. House Corbin returns fire. The Bog Witches and 1 squad of the battle armor take aim at the Huntsman. The Thunderbolt and the Catapult decide to overheat their weapons for additional damage output. But despite a lot of attack dice, they were only able to score 7 damage against the mech, removing all of its armor and inflicting 1 structure damage, but failed to inflict any critical damage. The Rifleman Lance opens fire on the Crossbow Prime with a target number of 8, and they hit, dealing a total of 9 damage to the mech. This wiped out all the mech's armor and dealt 3 structure damage and caused critical damage to its movement. The Cougar Lance took aim at the Turkina Prime with a target number of 7. Using lucky points, the Lance hit, dealing a total of 8 damage to the mech's armor. The Shadowhawk and the Atlas Lance all take aim at the Marauder with a target number of 8. They hit, but only dealt 6 damage to the mech's armor. Seeming to have no luck with taking out heavy mechs, House Corbin switches up their targets to the lighter mechs. The Fire Lance and the Warhammer Lance split their fire between the Battle Cobra and the Hanq. The Fafnirs both opened fire on the Hanq and ripped it to shreds with 9 points of damage, more than enough to destroy the mech. The Warhammers hit the Battle Cobra, which took 6 points of damage. This melted its armor off and dealt 2 damage to the mech's structure and causing critical damage to the mech's weapons. Trying to finish off that Battle Cobra, artillery was called down and it nailed the mech, destroying it where it stood. This brings shooting to a close. Both sides lost 2 more mechs each, and both sides are trading fire, inflicting a lot of punishing damage. One of the key terrain control points is firmly under the League's control, with the center one left uncontested. Let's get into turn 3. The battle continues in the sky, but this time House Corbin gets the edge with a roll of a 9 compared to the League's 6. Since House Corbin won the air superiority by 3, both sides choose half of their aircraft to dogfight, while one of House Corbin's aircraft is given the opportunity to attempt a light strike, with the Visigoths each scoring 1 damage on each of the Eagles. But an Eagle has the Dasher in their sights. The light strike can only inflict 1d3 damage, and the player rolled 3 damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. Taking out the Dasher by a light strike is a total bummer, but then again, the Dasher was not meant to be targeted by air power. House Corbin has the momentum, therefore they can decide if they want the battle to end in turn 4 or 5. The player chose that the battle will end after turn 4. That decision, however, made the League player think that House Corbin was going to bum rush the capture points, when in reality, House Corbin was considering to lose this battle in order to strike again next strategic turn. The League won the initiative. House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. House Corbin activates First Mech Company. The Atlases reposition in the neighborhood to keep their TMM up. The Warhammer and Fire Lance move to the tree line to square off against the Striker Trinary. The League player considered his forces situation. In the north, the player felt he had the advantage, but in the south, numerically both sides were equal with 11 mechs. However, House Corbin's heavy mechs are covered in armor and weapons. The key terrain to be captured is in the middle of the map. The League just needed to prevent House Corbin from moving into the center. Therefore, the player started concentrating his attack on the north. He activates his battle trinary. The support star edges forward, and the lighter mechs reposition in the lake for cover, making way for the heavier mechs to move forward. House Corbin activates his infantry company. The deputies and mechanized infantry stand still. The battle armor infantry, on the other hand, are a little crazy, and they charge forward. The battle armor moves right in front of the League mechs at the container yard to fight at close range. The League activates the ad hoc star. The Kodiak steps over the Dasher's wreckage and takes cover at its location. The rest of the star gets into cover behind the commercial buildings. House Corbin activates the Bog Witches. The Thunderbolt is in bad shape, so the mech is ordered to retreat. The rest of the lance jumps and moves into position where the water processing facility could provide some cover. The League activates the Striker Trinary, and it ground moves into positions trying to block line of sight with House Corbin's first mech company, while at the same time directing their firepower north. Realizing the north is about to get hammered, the second mech company pulls back a bit. The Shadowhawk Lance jumps to the south. The Rifleman and Cougar Lance pulls back, leaving their infantry and the Bog Witches to hold the front line of the north. It's harsh, but if the League is pushing in the north, then House Corbin wants to dominate in the southern sector of the map. The Elementals activate, and they do a combination of jumping and ground moves, getting into position to fight the battle armor. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The player said he wanted to start inflicting some meaningful losses to the League before they are allowed to capture Whiteloft. The player opens up his shooting with the Bog Witches, firing at the Warhammer 2C with a target number of 7, and they hit, but not as well as the player had hoped. The Bog Witches dealt 8 damage to the mech. Next up, the infantry in the occupied buildings, the battle armor, and the heavily damaged Thunderbolt, as well as the entire Rifleman Lance, open fire on the Kingfisher with a target number ranging between 7 and 8. They hit the mech, dealing a total of 18 points of damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. The Cougars open fire on the Kit Fox, holding the traffic circle key terrain, but they all miss with some poor dice rolls. The Atlas Lance and the Warhammer Lance open fire on the Kodiak, but they also rolled poorly and was only able to hit the mech with 7 damage. The building was also obliterated from all the missed shots. And finally, the Fire Lance and the Shadowhawk Lance open fire on the Black Lantern with a target number of 9. They hit, dealing 7 damage, wiping out all of its armor and leaving just 1 structure point left and critical damage to the mech's movement. The Black Lantern was lucky for just 1 minute because House Corbin called in artillery and hit it, destroying the mech. The League can now return fire. The Battle Trinary and the Container Yard split their fire between the battle armor contesting the key terrain. They also fired at the Bog Witches, Grasshopper, and Catapult. The battle armor platoon, unfortunately, was completely incinerated by the concentrated fire by those mechs. A lot of firepower was thrown at the Grasshopper and Catapult, but the Grasshopper only took 4 hits and the Catapult took 2. However, the facility they were standing on took 11 hits and it was destroyed. Both the Grasshopper and Catapult took 1 additional damage as the building collapsed under them. This unfortunately caused critical damage to the Grasshopper's engine. But you know what? The League's Viceroy is not going to be too happy that the water facility was destroyed, especially by her own forces trying to take out a pair of Bog Witches. That is a pretty big blow to the League, simply because the Bog Witches inadvertently caused the League to give themselves a black eye. Baron Bishop Corbin bestows the Blue High 5 meritorious achievement to the Bog Witches of Easterwich. Congratulations. The remaining League forces at the center and southern part of the map split their fire between the 3 remaining Warhammers in the woods. A lot of schwack was sent their way, and 2 of the Warhammers were destroyed. The remaining Warhammer took 4 damage to its armor. Still trying to take out the Bog Witch's Thunderbolt, the League called down an artillery strike, but it missed. The Thunderbolt lives. For now, at least. This brings turn 3 to a close. Both sides lost 2 more mechs each. House Corbin also lost an entire platoon of battle armor infantry. That's a bummer, but they literally took a bullet for the Bog Witches, because those shots could have easily been aimed at the Grasshopper and Catapult instead. Let's get on to turn 4. In turn 4, the League and House Corbin were still locked into dogfighting, dealing 2 damage to each side. However, for the ground forces, House Corbin had the initiative and basically turned it into a rout. With the threat of the battle armor eliminated from contesting the container yard, it was obvious that the League was going to win the battle. The League player ordered his trinaries to close on the enemy and overwhelm them. In our campaign rules, when a side wins a battle, there's a chance that the winning army could capture the forces of the losing side by being in proximity at the end of the battle. And this is something that House Corbin was trying to prevent. In the north, the Bog Witches, the Infantry Company, and what was left of the 2nd Met Company made a hasty retreat in order to avoid being captured. In the south, the 1st Met Company made a controlled withdrawal. During the shooting phase, most of the League mechs tried to pick off the vulnerable mechs of House Corbin. And you know what? I suspect the Bog Witches must also be dodgeball champions, because every shot missed. But the heavily damaged Atlas is not a dodgeball champion. He dipped when he should have ducked, and he took 7 damage, leaving it with 2 structure points. But oddly enough, no critical damage sustained. House Corbin returned fire. The player had considered focusing on destroying the logistics facility for his last turn of shooting. But ultimately the player decided against it, at least for now. He called his teammate, which was playing as the Baron Corbin, and got the okay to conduct a counterattack to retake Whiteloft in the next strategic turn. So instead, the Atlas Lance, the Cougar Lance, the Fire Lance, and the artillery concentrated their fire and took out the Kodiak and the monument it was taking cover behind. They also put 5 damage on the Masakari. And that brought turn 4 to a close. House Corbin's forces slips away, leaving the League standing victorious at Whiteloft. House Corbin lost 6 mechs and an entire platoon of battle armor infantry. The League lost 9 mechs and sustained a lot of damage. The League also lost a valuable economic building, but the logistics hub is still functioning, and having an enemy at your front door with a functioning logistics hub is not a good idea. House Corbin knows that the League's cluster is isolated, without much reinforcements nearby. House Corbin, on the other hand, could use his interior lines for resupply and repair his army and then counterattack. The 2nd Regiment commander already got the blessing from House Corbin player to make a counterattack on Whiteloft during the next strategic turn. But if that fails, then he will call in airstrikes and destroy the logistics hub. But that's for the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this battle report. If you did, please consider to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Okay, we'll see you at the next battle.